To our In Conversation. I just mentioned I'm very croaky today. I recognised some of you were with us on Monday when I suspected I just got a cold. I haven't got COVID, so please bear with us. I'm sure Kirsty and Jim will be able to chat away very happily. So really, really chuffed to have you both with us. I know this is a bit out of your comfort zone, but you've got so much that you can offer people. It's just introduce you to everybody. So many people already know you in the industry because you've been going forever. long. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, Hague Dental was born in
1996 in South London.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, been around a bit. Yeah. So it's really exciting time for Hague, isn't it? Because over the last couple of years, you've evolved even more. With Kirsty you've always been involved, haven't you? But you've started to grow your interior design side of the business, which is it just goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Best equipment in the world from you guys. But if we don't have that vision of how we want our practices to look and the vibe we want, then we're a bit useless. We're not the most creative when we're in practice. Stick teeth in front of someone and they're happy, but we're not interior designers, we're not business people on the whole. We have to learn all these things or get expert help in. So chuffed to bits that Hague have been supporting Adam for nearly a year now, which for me shows that you support practice managers, which is absolutely amazing. In so many aspects that we need help with, that the more people we can have like yourselves to help us, the better. So just wanted to kind of go through a few questions on the hot seat. So sort of technical design, when a practice is looking to refurb or maybe open a squat practice, what is critical? What's the starting point for that project?
I suppose the starting point is to work out, is it viable or not? So that there's no point going down a road where it's not. So I'd say the technical design is there to assess the feasibility of the site before you start on the journey, and then halfway through realize this isn't for us. So it's a way to put all the right designs, legislations together to come out with something that would work, or prove it wouldn't work, which is just as helpful. Find another site. So I'd say it's for dental. We need nowadays to be creative, as you mentioned. Obviously, with the space that's there, we're in the middle of a city. It might not be as much space as we'd ideally want. Typically, we've got to be systematic. We've got to meet certain requirements that are out there as well.
Even for me, when I'm thinking about the interior side, it's always the blend of thinking, okay, what's good for legislation, compliance, what's good spatially, what's going to work for patient journey, team journey throughout the day, and aesthetics. So you're thinking about everything all together, as well as budget, because that always often comes in to spoil the fun. But the technical aspect is really the bit that brings all those elements together before you look at the flowery bit, really, that I do. But
I think that's really interesting, because I mean, I visit practices, you visit practices, and when we've got established practices, that have been going 10, 15, 20, maybe more years, obviously it's kind of, we're having to adapt, use what we've got. So I suppose if you've got, if you are doing a squat, then you could save yourself a lot of problems if you can just actually get one that fits all of those things you've just mentioned.
We're doing one in Birmingham at the moment, where it's a massive practice, but the owners came to us because the flow of the practice just doesn't work. They've got two entrances, clients don't know where they're going, so it doesn't work spatially, it doesn't really work on a legislative level. So we are almost, well, we're not gutting the inside, but we're moving a lot of walls inside the practice in order to reconfigure it and then make it work for the long term, because obviously practices are not what they were 10 years ago. They need a lot more space, and so much of the way that practices are designed now has changed.
Yeah, it's I think that's the thing. It's, and also from a business point of view, you know, how many rooms, and it might not be how many rooms can we get into this one building. It's got, like you say, it's got to flow. We've got so many things, you know, we've got decon rooms now, which, you know, are ideal. Obviously, I do know practices that don't have a decon room even now, but you know, it's getting harder and harder to function and meet that legislation. So obviously it's really difficult for us to visualize what we want things to look like, what they want to flow like. So you've got a showroom, so you know generally would at the initial part invite people into the showroom.
Yeah, so I think the showroom is a very important way to communicate. People in the dental industry are very talented, intelligent people, but often plans and pictures on the internet are just not enough. You need to be able to try it out, to demonstrate, to sit on a stool, is it right for me? The chair itself, how's it working? What functions, features are there? Different layouts of surgeries. It might be that a dentist has been working as an associate for the last decade in a certain way, and that's what they're used to, and they're not aware of what else is out there. I mean, going back to the technical design, it's where we allow for future-proofing. So again, if you take an empty property and say, I want this to be the 6th surgery practice, but I want to start with 1 or 2 surgeries, we're future-proofing in the technical design to allow for this. This sort of conversation happens in the showroom where we can explain what we mean. That, okay, you don't want to be redoing a wall twice, the flooring twice. We want to make sure there's some conduit with a draw cord to pull through. And although it doesn't sound a very glamorous part of it, it's just as important as what you see in the showroom, and it's all intertwined.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also the you know, with, you know, Adam and with my sort of business development head on, I go into practices and I always look at, right, the number of practices where I can see that they've got spare rooms, spare chairs unused. So someone's come in and kind of gone wallop, you know, and I suppose they've got a huge extra payments to make on rooms that aren't actually bringing any income in. So with you, I guess if we've got that idea of what we can do, sort of staging it, but with the fundamental foundation sort of there, that's actually the best way to go about it, isn't it? I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 4 teenage children and one of them drives, but I'm not going to go out and buy 4 cars just for when they've all passed their test. It's a similar thing here where you've got maybe, I mean, recently we put in an 8 surgery practice. Against my advice, wanted to kit out all 8. You're paying the finance, but also the warranty starts on day 1. So you might start to diminish that. It might be a year till you use the room. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. But we're also future-proofing, and new things are coming out all the time. And it might be in the future that something better comes out. We do pre-warn if something's going to be made obsolete, and it might be the ideal package for that person. And therefore, now's the time to place an order. But it might be that something better, all singing, all dancing, touch screens comes out, and you think, why didn't I just wait for that? That would be frustrating.
But I think a common question always is like, you know, what chair should I buy? You know, like that's just a basic question. But until you've looked at the spatial layout, so we'll have a plan laid out in the showroom, and then people will come and see the choice of chairs. And most of the squats we're doing is whereby they've got maybe a Belmont in one room and an ADEC in another, and not all the same brand under one roof, because what suits one dentist doesn't suit another, what suits one room doesn't suit another, what suits one type of dentistry doesn't suit another. So all has to be considered. So just because you're a Belmont lover doesn't mean to say stick with that. It's worth looking at the choices out there, because they all vary in terms of budget, quality, comfort, size, access in the room. So you were looking in the showroom at where the door position is. So when you bring the patient in, is that the best workflow? for the team and for the patient. So all those things are really helpful. So take time to come if you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to compare showrooms to exhibitions, and it used to be you could go to an exhibition and see all of Hague, all of Belmont, all of Caver, all of Sirona, compare them all. But now there's 4 exhibitions a year that we do, and counting. We're coming along with befores and afters, meet the team, arranging appointments for us to visit sites, but also come to our showroom, because you'll go to an exhibition now and you will not be offered the entire range. You'd be pushed into that one model that they're showing, and it'd be a fluke if that was the right one for you. And going to an independent showroom is the key thing.
I think that's what what I can see a difference with you guys, because you know, you've learned to speak our language, and our language is, you know, offering patients treatment plans, looking at different options, different budgets, different needs, different pros and cons, and that is what builds a really good relationship. I know you've got people that have been with you forever.
Yes.
Because things do wear out, the same as teeth, you know, things go wrong, you're never done, there's always something to plan ahead for. And actually having a relationship, you know, with someone like Hague, where you can, you know better than us what we need, actually, a lot of the time. Your point, Kirsty, before about the different needs for the different rooms is I think what people miss sometimes. They'll kit out a room, maybe, oh well, that's only going to be a hygienist room, you know, and that's fine, I understand that. But we all know that things happen, things go wrong, things do break down, things are unexpected, and we do need to be able to utilise each room should those things happen. So we need, for me, this is like the planning stage is something that's going to save people a lot of money, and business interruptions that possibly might happen.
I'm an engineer by trade, so a little bit negative in the way I may come across. When I'm designing, I'm waiting for something to go wrong. So there's always a backup compressor, a backup suction, a backup autoclave to keep the practice running, and that's what I start off with. Even when we're talking about a squat practice, I've got a little bit of a worst case scenario hat on, and it's that's the key, so that when things do go wrong, switch over, we're still going.
And I love that. Again, that's speaking our language. That's the practice language. You know, I've got the massive respect for the dentists that put on Instagram the cases that have gone wrong, rather than hundreds of cases that look brilliant. It's like you learn more from actually being a bit more humble, a bit careful. I know, you know, that worst case scenario is definitely something that people should factor in, because it happens, doesn't it? So if we wanted to kind of have a look at what something might look like, I'm guessing you guys are able to give an image, provide, I don't know, is it like a 3D image? I don't know, you tell me.
So I suppose that's the change, one of the big changes for me. So my background was design and therapy all those years ago, but when I came into working with Jim after having 4 children, I was in customer service and helped with marketing and bits and pieces, but always had that love of helping people in the showrooms with bits and pieces in terms of choosing colours, cabinetry, flooring, and that sort of thing. But a couple of years ago, we decided to grow the business, which meant that we had somebody else come in to run some of those other bits that I did. And so now I do interiors full time for people, which I absolutely love, because I love working with people, basically. So what I do now in terms of helping people with the interior side is not just provide obviously the design and spatial layouts that we've been talking about, but also consider really the visual of what this is going to look like. There's a lot of interior designers out there who just provide a mood board and some pretty samples. But what I'm going to show you now, if that's okay, Lisa, is just some examples of some renders that I've done. So let me actually, before I do that, to find the right one. So
and I've got to admit, me visiting lots of practice, I've seen the work that you've actually done, Kirsty, and it is second to none. I've never seen anything like it.
I'm just going to present because you can see it. Picture. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Perfect. So this was a relocation project you did. I just want to emphasize before I show you some of these, you'll see big and small. We'll help with anything from just changing a flooring to think about a very inexpensive reception desk. So this desk, for example, is an off-the-shelf desk, and it's about £1,500 to buy, but it's a really clean look for a desk, and it fits the space perfectly, because obviously we've planned it out to make sure we've got enough space in the room. But people can immediately see with this new 3D visualization software basically what they're really going to get for their money, and that's what I love about it. It gives people the confidence to take their practice to the next level. So this one, for example, was a lovely couple of ladies in London, and when I first showed them this, they were unsure about the goals, and they was like, oh, is it too glitzy? How do I feel about this? But I have to say they absolutely love it now. And they said every single patient that comes in now just loves the feel of the practice. It's not too bougie, because there's a lot of bougie practices out there, and that is definitely not for everybody. In fact, I think it's for a very small percentage of practices that would like that look. But if you want that, we can do it. But I think a lot of people just want something that's comfortable, clean, and inviting. That's one of those. Let me just move on to some other. This is a big development we're doing, but I just want to show you on the other end of the spectrum in terms of size of projects. A little reception. So this was in an older residential building, yeah, it's just a very small reception area, but we put a window in so the receptionist that was sitting here could see through to people coming in and out, because they kept complaining that they couldn't see people leaving the surgeries upstairs. So we created a really nice room. Larger squat practice. Again, so just creating a really nice feel, but people understand really where their money's going and in terms of making these changes. This was a reception in a very busy part of Angel in London that we did last year. And again, 4 receptionists. So really had to think about, because there wasn't a second entrance, how the logistics of something like this was going to come together. So we offer, I think we might come to talk about, we offer project management as well to help people really plan, okay, if we're going to be doing a large front of house like this with so many people in the team, how is that going to work? Yeah. DDA toilets, store of my life. I spend my life designing DDA toilets.
How do you make them pretty? I mean, that's the first one that I've looked at and gone, yeah, that's pretty. That's a hell of a job.
This one's compliant, fully compliant.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look so plain and cold.
I think there's another one further on, this one as well.
Oh,
another
wow.
DDA toilet. But it can be warm and inviting. It's the first place that patients go when they come in the practice, tends to be, they go to the toilet. So make it a nice space.
The patients will judge the practice by the toilet in the same way that perhaps, I'm speaking for myself, but I judge a restaurant by their toilet. And if that's tidy, then there's an assumption that the kitchen's tidy, and it's the same in your practice. If the toilet looks clean, then the decontamination must be as well. It's completely unconnected, but it's a mental thing from a patient.
I think it's from a human point of view, to be honest, as well. So they're stunning. I love it. All of them. They're just.
It's a great way to communicate from us to our customers what we're looking to achieve. But then for our customers, it's a great way for them to win their team over. No one likes having the builders in, but I think if you can show visualization like this is what we're aiming for, and you can pull the whole team in so that everybody can explain for a bit of disruption to a patient, and it just brings everyone in line, really.
The amount of practices I step into, Lisa, and they say, oh, I've got a grumpy receptionist, they're really not going to like this. And I say, work with them, let us work with them to find out what they need. At the end, they're like, thank you so much. But it takes them getting there. And that's what, at the end of the day, we're there to listen to not just what the principal wants or the practice manager, of course, but also the whole team if you want us to. Some people say, oh, there's too many cooks, actually, if we get other people involved. But it does make a difference if you've got a grumpy receptionist.
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. You have Hopefully you haven't got a grumpy receptionist and they get on board.
We're,
No,
we're kind of looking at the front of it, the design, the flavour of a desk or the whole waiting area. But then we're also interviewing the receptionist to see, well, what do they need? You know, they've got a card machine, a printer, where's the cup of tea go, the sellotape, the stapler, and then we can work out pigeonholes and a space for everything, and then marry the two sides together so it's a practical solution.
I was going to say, it's got to be practical and workable, hasn't it? You know, and you hit the nail on the head. You know, when you've got a beautiful practice, people's attitudes change, not just the patients, but the team. They're proud to be there. You know, if you're recruiting, then people walking in, you do get a different type of person attracted to your practice. And it just mentally, I mean, it's the same when we, you know, the other practice managers on here will be empathetic with me. When we change uniforms, you know, it's like getting 40 people to agree on colour. It's a nightmare. But the minute they've all got that new uniform on, it's like different people. It just elevates people's mental states and enthusiasm and professionalism. And I mean, that's beautiful. Every single one is absolutely beautiful here.
I partly came into this because we had a very long-term customer who we put lots of used equipment, because we used to sell a lot of used equipment over the years. And she bought bits and pieces from us, and then she kept talking to me on when I was doing customer service about her reception area. And she said, "Oh, one day you're going to come and do it for me, Kirsty." And I was like, "I will." And then one day her husband phoned up and says, "We're going to do it. We're actually going to do this practice." And it was, you know, fairly rundown area really, but the practice just could do with some love. And the day that I went back in to see her after we'd finished it, she just broke into tears, and she just said, "You've changed not only my life here, but a lot of my team's life, because it just makes such a difference to the, you know, how people feel about going to work."
Yeah, and I think it just makes us all up our game that little bit more, which, you know, is amazing. So I'm guessing that, you know, as far as, so what would be the first steps? Getting, you know, going to the showroom, sitting down. You, I know, like to get to know your customers. They're not just customers, because you want their personalities to be involved in that design as well, don't you? And I think that is what makes it different. This is a whole different experience than looking on for a desk that you can order online and things like that. Obviously that comes with, you know, a higher price tag than doing that other route, but I think everyone probably can see why people would choose to do that. But you can offer lots of different budgets and finance, I'm assuming, as well.
Definitely, you're paying more for the design, without a doubt. A lot of work goes in those designs. We've got real items. Before, what made us decide also to go into this side of things was that I would see interior design printouts or from customers that they'd say, "That's what I want," and then I'd be like, "But that won't work. You won't be able to even fit a chair behind that desk in that corner." But if you could put me in touch with the designer, and then we can see where this desk is coming from. But no, it's just a visual. It's just a pretty picture. So we're always starting with real things. We're starting with HTML 105, with document M for disabled, anti-discriminative, and then we're also thinking about all the future-proofing that I say. But if we can get a solution all together, you're actually going to reduce the build side, because you've communicated to the builder what you want. You're going to get it right first time. If the builder doesn't, that's on them, not you. You're not changing your mind on the color. I want different sockets on the walls. I don't just want the white. What was in my mind was this. What was in my mind was that. We heard it a lot over the years, and forever specking things out onto order sheets and plans. And it was exactly what was produced, but the customer wasn't happy. And a lot of companies out there get them to initial each page and sign it, so that if it went into a court of law, well, we did what we said we would for the contract. But the customer's not happy, and we just went about it a different way. Let's communicate exactly what it's going to look like. And then if the customer's not happy with that look, we'll change it. But before we set foot on site with the trades. And once the trades go in, it goes in less time. It's right first time. And those are the key differences.
I think it's laying it out and planning, looking at, so with all the design side, we're obviously looking at all the nice pretty pictures that I've just shown you, but at the same time, that's phase one. In phase two, we look at breaking down those costs room by room, item by item, from light switches to I don't know, door handles. Are you going to replace doors? Big items in there. Although you think light switches is, oh, that's just a cheap thing to change. If you do that in the middle of a project, it can add £1,000 to the cost of a project. So if you plan it out before, then you'll just make sure that you keep to budget and you really know what you're working with as much as possible. So so we have a software package which basically lays out every single element that's going to go into a refurbishment in terms of doors, floors, lights, furniture, of course, think desks, anything like that, all the detail, so that ourselves as project managers and designers can inform not only your builder or our builder, but also other trades that are involved, because often you have quite a few trades involved. So everybody has all the details that they need to make sure that it comes in on time and on budget, basically.
I think I've worked with quite a few practices who have undertaken the project themselves, not realising exactly how much is involved. And on a few occasions, what I've seen is what they originally wanted changes. They get told, oh, well, we've come across this now and we can't do that, so you're going to have this. So ultimately, you're paying all this money for something that you thought you were being promised, and then it didn't happen, and the disappointment, it takes off the shine altogether, doesn't it? And I think it is that, when they're spending that money, they don't want to compromise, do they? Yes, they want, they may have to be told a couple of things that isn't possible, but if you know that from the beginning, it's a much better way of doing it, isn't it?
You just want to be able to see what's available, what's possible, kind of look into the future, and then work out, is this going the right way or not before you start. I've seen people do it themselves, then redo it and it doesn't last. McDonald's refurbishes each one of their sites every 4 years, but a practice isn't going to be able to do that. It's typically 20 years or a similar time to that, and we're trying to design something classically that will see the test of time, will be robust enough, win the team over, win the patients over, and be on budget. And it's always that. There's a compromise in there.
We do have quite a lot of practices we work with where we just do design work for now, so we're not undertaking the whole thing. So that's worth people knowing, because often they've got their own builder, they are happy to run it, and they haven't got the budget to do it. But if you just want us to do the design work, an element, because a lot of the other big companies out there supply equipment, and a lot of the others, they don't do this aspect, and this is what makes us unique. So one of the reasons, lots of reasons.
Yeah. No, I agree, and that's why we wanted to support you guys and let people see the difference, because either way they're going to be spending money, and it's like, how about you get what you want? And I'm very much like, I'm creative up to a point, not particularly creative, and it's things like, when we're doing things, marketing in work, in practice and things like that, I will have an idea and I will send it to my designer and go, see what you think of this. Because if I feed too much, it's my limited creativity. Whereas if you actually go to someone, there you go, see what you come up with, 9 times out of 10 they come up with something that I go, oh my goodness, I love it. And it's
I have people come to me and varying, like some people know exactly what they want. They come to me with a mood board, or I think they know exactly what they want, probably, but it change. But whereas another person might say to me, I've had one last year that we opened and said, all I want is red and blue upholstery because on my chairs, because my clients always say they love it, and I want an award-winning practice, please. And that was it. And they literally left us to do it, to open it, and to organise it for him. So it really varies, but you know, the involvement, and we always talk about here about collaboration and how important that is, because as much as we are, you know, we a turnkey company and we're doing a lot of the work for people, things do not work out very well unless it's a collaboration between practices and us and trades. Everybody has to be singing off the same hymn sheet. So we have, I don't know how many WhatsApp groups I've got going, lose track of how many different WhatsApp groups. But, you know, just somebody just will message me, a lady yesterday, she was in a panic about something because the builders were there. And I'm just like, no, don't worry, we're here for you. But it's always that constant communication and reassurance during a job like these, because it doesn't matter how, whether it's just a toilet or whether it's a much larger phased project, you know, you just need to make sure that everybody knows what's going on so they can reassure patients, team members, all that stuff we've been talking about. Really.
And I think, you know, the fact that things can be planned and you are so experienced that you do sometimes anticipate, you know, well, hopefully this will be fine, but we don't know until we get in there kind of thing, you know, because people are potentially losing money as the fittings are going in and things like that. So I understand that, you know, you just kind of plan for that thing and make sure it keeps on time. We did a project, just a 2 surgery squat a couple of years ago, well, 2017, and it was I wish I hadn't done it myself. I kind of felt a bit of an achievement afterwards, but oh my goodness, dealing with the builders and the plumbers and the electricians, and we were about 2 months over, which wasn't a problem for us, but I know it would be potentially for someone else. And we're talking not meeting targets and all those kind of things. I think, again, what makes you guys a bit different is obviously I've been down, you invited me to Horsham to speak to your engineers and your project teams, and it was a real honor to come, because I don't know any other company in your sector that actually wants to know what goes on in a practice manager's day. What are your stresses? How can we make it better? And your guys and girls were so open and wanted to understand how they can make our lives a bit easier. And honestly, that in itself for me is you know, a bit of a deal breaker when I'm choosing what companies to work with. And they were so funny. They were really, I think when I said, you know, when you hear us screaming about UDAs and targets and this is why, and I was like,
but you know, at the end of the day, I think there are, you know, engineers particularly do go into, a lot of engineers you'll find will go into practices and they don't understand industry. They don't understand the day of a normal working practice. So when they're a bit stressed when you come into a practice, they don't understand why. So we spend a lot of time, you know, training our staff, getting to understand why in customer service. They took a lot of very difficult calls from a lot of very stressed out people who are losing a lot of money. And I mean, we were built on the basis of good customer service. Jim saw that there was a need in the market for a company who could really look after people, and that's still the same today. Amongst all this other great stuff we're talking about, the backbone of Hague is still customer service and just providing the right solution for people when they really need it. So.
Yes, yeah, and that is, you know, obviously once people have had all these, they've got the practices up and running. Obviously we have got the maintenance, and the servicing. Yeah, I've got I don't know if John mentioned, John is part of Hague, and John's coming with Olivia next week to visit my practice.
Yeah. So we've got a new business development manager who actually is a treatment coordinator, so it's really exciting.
I know, I was like really happy to meet her.
She's based in the Midlands because we've got a new base. Well, it's not new anymore. We've had it 3 years, based in Newark, but now our coverage area is much larger. So hence why we're going to see Lisa. We've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've wanted, you know, it's a long way. It's a long that'll be a lot of travel expenses to get your engineers coming up to crew. But yeah,
we just charge a call out. We don't charge travel.
oh,
I've always thought of it from the practice point of view, so that why do you care where the engineer started? It's almost irrelevant. I think we've got to understand how you work. I don't want to come across as corny, but when I first started working on the equipment, I could visualize exactly how all the electronics, the pneumatics, all the mechanics could work on something and fix it. But how's it being used? What's it being used for? I didn't know. That took a lot of understanding. And that's what I'm passing on as the difference. And how you charge a customer, you're charging 3 hours to get there, but then they're thinking, did it take you 10 minutes or not? It shouldn't even come into the thought. That's to get an engineer to you, parked up, and then so much per sort of 15-minute spell, and then the parts. And it's just a transparent sort of way of doing it, really.
and again, it is part of building a really trusted, transparent relationship with a company that we're working with, and a company that we've been using is now no longer, well, it's been sold actually, so it's perfect opportunity for us to get all our maintenance and support over to you guys. And really, as people know, this isn't a sales thing. I work with and support people that I actually use myself, be it compliance or anything else. So yeah, I'm really, really chuffed that John's coming over, and I can meet Olivia, because again, you've employed somebody that actually has been in practice and gets
Yes.
it is, you know, pretty spectacular, honestly. And you get reps coming in all the time from different places who've never worked a day in practice. It drives us mad, people, doesn't it?
Our customer service hub get calls in from customers, and sometimes they might sound irate, but they're not. They're hugely frustrated with the compressors down and 4 surgeries are out of action, and it's a way of empathizing, understanding what someone's going through the other end, and then you can help them in a much better position. And that's all it's about, really. It's being able to do the right thing.
This is the thing, you know, we want to work with people such as yourselves. You know, things go wrong. They go wrong. Nobody's fault sometimes, but sometimes it is people's fault. Sometimes nurses, you know, haven't drained the compressor. Sometimes filters haven't always been. And I know you guys are very educational in, you teach the prevention. Again, talking our language, prevention all the time, you know, and pure planning, prototypes, you know, all these things that we do is what you're doing. So we understand that. And I do genuinely think that's what makes you absolutely stand out from everybody else. And the value that's in that is priceless, to be honest. Does anybody have any questions? You can either pop them on here, or if you want to contact us afterwards, this is going to be sent out to everyone that registered and also the rest of our Adam gang. Bear with me a second, we've just had a question come up actually. This is from the lovely Kiri. How do we have any advice on renovating listed buildings? It is just the externals that are important, or are there internal restrictions also that may compromise space design or flow? If so, how do we make the most of any restrictions?
Okay, so planning restrictions, I assume. So to concentrate on the planning restrictions to begin with, there would be the change of use potentially. It depends really what category the building falls under already. Then you've got the externals, obviously very important. How can you change it? That's a separate planning application. There'd be a third planning application for any advertising you want to put on the externals as well. So potentially there's 3 planning applications, as with any building. But when it's a listed building, then there's also working with the Heritage Trust, or where it's listed, the conservation company. Yeah. So we often bring in a consultant ourselves who specialises in that and can help with applications, can also help with dealing with the heritage firms. Sometimes we can bring in an architect, although we can do all the drawings in-house, but if someone's got a particular leaning to a certain trust or a certain sympathy towards the more elder buildings, then it's treating it the right way. But again, it's planning, making sure you've got everything you want. There's a lot more involved in sometimes in a listed building. But yeah, the reward at the end, it could be in a great location, the look of it, it's part of the community. So many positives as well.
I mean, I think the key for us recently, because I think I've got about 11 different planning applications that we're involved with through when we use a planning consultant, which will free up a lot of time for anybody doing, going through that process and take some of the stress of it. But we then will get involved with providing a plan. So just to briefly show, that's what I was just doing a second ago. Just and this is a different sort of shop front, but we can provide all the visuals that they'll need for a planning because if you're going to change any of your frontage or there's any aspect you're going to change due to restrictions through listings and things like that, we'll provide elevations to make sure that all the details are provided, scale drawings, CAD drawings, to make sure that the council know exactly, basically what you're looking to change. So we'll work with you on that. And I've got one at the moment where we are working in Essex on a project, and I think it's rare, but it's been back into the council 3 times because it's in a conservation area. So many practices seem to be in those sorts of areas. But it's possible, you can work with it, but it's just doing it in the right way, and having a consultant is something I'd highly advise.
Kiri just added that it is already a practice, and I think I'm right in saying, Kiri, that you and your partner have taken over a practice and are looking, at some point maybe for extensions and change of, you're obviously going to want to make it your own at some point. I think I don't need to convince you to get in touch with Kirsty and Jim. I think that's probably something that you can see would be a really sensible move. But yeah, I suppose if you're looking, it's how much you're looking to change, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it tends to be phased, a lot of it, when it comes to a project. If you've taken over a practice you want to make your own, which is we get a lot of calls about that kind of in that scenario. It's a rundown practice and we've taken hold of it. But it's really thinking about, okay, again, what Jim says, like, what's your priorities, what's for now and what's for the future, and we will help you plan that out. So often we're thinking about, okay, well, actually, the people call me and say, oh, I want to redo the reception because that's the first thing people see when they come in. I want to rebrand, because we often will help with that as well. So we'll rebrand, we'll do the reception, but then they'll say, oh, but the outside is a bit tired. So we're thinking about, actually, maybe we need to do the outside first, because if we're changing the windows or any doors, that's going to affect the inside and all the decoration in that room. So it's just planning it out and really doing that. It can be a little bit at a time, or it depends on how much room you can give us to at once, really.
When it's if you're taking over a practice, or it's an existing practice that have decided to modernise, you've got to keep working throughout the whole time. You don't want downtime. That's kind of the enemy. You've got all the overheads, the expenses, the patience, the goodwill there. So you want to keep it running. But I think it's important to design the whole thing, inside and out, as if you're doing it all in one hit and it's an empty building.
But then
so that you're forever going in that same direction to the finished target. Then break it down into manageable phases so that you can never miss something, never miss that future-proofing opportunity. A number of people I've met along the way have half done this, half done that, and then later come back and do the other half. You end up paying 150%, maybe double even. It's not worth it. It's worth doing things properly and doing them once, but not overspending. Just bring it to a manageable phase.
I love that. We've got another question from the lovely Alex. I'm going to make her actually ask her question in person. I'm also going to embarrass her and say Alex has recently joined Adam as our Welsh regional mentor. And on Friday, she won Practice Manager of the Year.
I saw that.
That's great.
Doesn't it? This girl deserves it. It was her time, honestly. Alex, you've got a question. Sorry about that.
I'm just going to unmute myself. Sorry. Right. Basically, thank you very much, Lisa. We are a 3-surgery practice. There is a residential flat above the practice that we're considering going up into. I just kind of want to know what your thoughts are on what we need to consider, what the first steps would be. I need to assess how viable it is before we kind of even think about it and how much it's going to cost, obviously. But it would just be interesting to see what your guys' kind of thoughts on that were.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good question. Thank you. And well done. So what used to be D1 use for dental has now gone into category E. So I would find out what is the category above for the residential, because very occasionally that can fall into E, so you wouldn't need a planning application for that. But I'd say 90% of the time you would. So a lot of practices, it's just a formality for expansion. I've known some where they've applied several times and never been able to go above the ground floor. So it's to find out if it's something that would be permissible. From a practical point of view, we would want to say, well, looking at perhaps a survey so we can see what structures are there, what services are there, what are you looking to achieve long term. It might be you want to gain one surgery now, but later many more. Depends on the space that's there. So often it's just getting a new pair of eyes and ears that are experienced to come around, take a look at it. In the past, more often than not, it's been viable and worth doing. Occasionally it's been, well, actually, why don't you relocate the business? Because there's a lot less downtime there and a lot less disruption. We can just have everything ready to move across to. There's a couple at the moment I'm working on where they've opted to run all the services separately. So it's almost like 2 practices within one building, so that you're then future-proofing, in effect, if the compressor's down, you're not taking out every surgery. There's still somewhere you can work and move patients to. Same with suction systems. It's a lot easier on the service specs for the plumbers, for the electricians as well. So, and then it's a lot less disruption on the existing side of the practice.
Brilliant.
How does that sound?
Yeah, thank you.
It's a big step, and I think often people think, oh, where do you go for that advice? And often people the immediate thought is, oh, I'll get an architect involved. Don't do that straight away if you don't have to, because it costs you a lot of money. Look for some advice from somebody within the dental industry that's done projects, because you will spend a lot of money and you won't necessarily get the right design. Architects are not dental people. Well, if for example with us, we would always say to people that we can do the spatial bit and consider the layout, the new layout, on as many floors as you want. But we will advise when the right time is to get a structural engineer or an architect, and if you need to spend on that at all. But you will spend a lot of money as soon as you take that big leap of faith.
Yeah, what I'm trying to just assess before we go anywhere with anything.
Think about where the stairs would be from one part of the building to the other. Is that cutting in?
You're going to have to connect the two.
Yeah, which it's not always as awkward as it sounds, but in some buildings it's very much changing the structures. So then we'd include a structural engineer sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
It's interesting. I've been in. This isn't obviously. This is not your dream, Alex. But I know I've been in practices that have tried to do things very much themselves, and on the cheap, ringing around getting the cheapest possible. You're going to end up with the cheapest possible. And I've been in. Well, I know one actually, not too far from me, who won an author contract, and actually they've closed down after 2 months because it's not fit for purpose. They can't have the aircon on because it trips out the compressor and all these different things, and they've literally just fallen apart. because they've just tried to do things. I'm assuming they've done it themselves, but they've also got as cheap as they can get, and it's just a disaster. And I just think,
sometimes if you can pay a few £1,000s and have someone who's done it 101 times before, it saves you doing a whole lot of new learning, taking it on, losing a last childhood memory or whatever you have, and suddenly you're doing all of this for once. If you decided we're part of a big chain and this is going to be the first of 50, then it's worth learning, and I'm happy to help people. But yet, if it's sometimes I've spoken to dentists and they're broken down that they're going to have to take weeks and weeks off to do their own project management, to do their own learning of all the different legislations, and they're like, that's not worth it. But if there isn't a project manager appointed in any one of these projects, whether it's an expansion within, a relocation, a squat, even just a surgery refurb, there needs to be an element of project management there. And if you don't have one, then you've got to look in the mirror. It becomes you. And you're handling the electrician, the plumber, the floorer, the plasterer, and it can be a nightmare.
I had a nightmare. I mean, you guys know that I work alongside Gilly in practice, and this guy he was an architect who offered to project manage it for something like £60,000 or something like that, and we just said, no, it's only 2 surgeries, we're 3 minutes from the other practice, we'll do it ourselves. And we did it, and we were proud, and we didn't have too many problems. But it was every day, all day. It was, honestly, I would not recommend it to anybody that, like you say, wants to keep their mind.
Because I think the other thing to say is, even if you do have a project manager, like it goes back to what I was saying about the collaboration part, that you still do need to deal with correspondence, in order to be able to sign things off. That people have this high expectation when it comes to working with us in terms of project management, but sometimes people need a bit of a reality check in the fact that still things needed confirming, like you're saying, really, Lisa, and agreeing, because at the end of the day, it's got to be right all the way along. There are so many steps involved in any project that it just needs signing off and making sure that anybody who's looking at plans understands them, because most people, a lot of people we work with can't read a plan properly. So really, what are you getting? So spend the time, and if you don't know, ask your designer. Ask them really what is going in that cabinetry. It doesn't matter if it's going from Howden's or coming from a dental equipment company like us. Make sure you understand the layout of every single detail, because it's going to make a massive difference to people for a long time to come.
No. Okay. Oh my gosh, we've talked for nearly an hour. And so I know. No, honestly, it's absolutely amazing to get to speak to you both. Just to give us insight into, that many years experience I know it's going to be so helpful, for so many people, just to make them stop and think a little bit, really, before they embark on these things. So obviously this is recorded, it's going to go out to everyone. Sam from Adam will also send out contact details for Hague, so anyone has any equipment maintenance projects, anything at all, please do get in touch with us. I know you guys look after our Adam members really, really well. Yes. And get down, these guys give you a hell of a welcome when you go and visit.
You get a full breakfast on a Friday.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Kirsty and Jim. Thank you, Sam, for organising, and thank you everyone that's joined us or taking the time to listen to us chatting today. It's been a pleasure, even with COVID. I'm gonna go to bed now.
Better soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys, and we will see you all again soon.